Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening from. Welcome to the Change Management Simplified podcast, where we will explain and discuss what change management is really about, using real examples alongside principles of change management based on our experiences on projects, transformations, change initiatives, and of course, the home experiences as well. In today's episode, we will continue from where we left off in episode 6 with the emotional intelligence topic. Just as a recap, in episode 5, we introduced emotional intelligence as a topic. In episode 6, we focused on self-awareness of emotional intelligence. Today's episode, we will focus on self-management. But as a quick recap, the 4 components of emotional intelligence are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. We will continue to cover each of these components in each episode, just to make sure we give enough content and enough insight into the topic. As we did in episode 6 for self-awareness, we will do the same here for self-management. We will discuss when it goes wrong, how it goes wrong, how to develop self-management, and the benefits of self-management, or what you gain from applying self-management. So, today's question that I have in front of me is, how do you develop and benefit from emotional intelligence of self-management? And why is it essential to your success, leadership, and in life? And that's because we need to apply it to be successful in everything we do, in any normal life, at school, at work, in everything we do. What is self-management, or what is emotional intelligence of self-management? This is an interesting question because it's something we should be doing or do, but sometimes don't realize it. You will find that sometimes it's referred to as self-regulation or self-control. And this is really because you will hear these keywords or these behaviors all through the context that I'm going to give in the different examples as we go through the episode. But when you think about it, self-management, self-regulation, self-control, it's all about managing your own behavior. But in a nutshell, it's really the ability for you to use your self-awareness to manage or control your emotions and behavior in the various scenarios, and most especially in stressful and tense situations, especially on projects where it's at the peak time, people pushed for time, timeline's not going to be extended, been doing long hours. You will find that you will be tested you will be tested on self-management, and you just have to try and be able to apply it in such cases, especially as a leader, because your motivation at that point is key, and you don't want your team to be seeing the negative behavior, which might just put them off, or also maybe just become contagious. It's also how you adapt to the situation at hand without turning the negative impulsive emotions to the positive ones. You want to maintain the positive aspect of the environment, of the team, to make sure that everyone works towards a common goal successfully and makes you a better leader. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying hide your true feelings, because if it's intense phases of the project, temperatures will rise, but that's okay. Tempers will rise as well, but you need to be able to manage the emotions of those peak emotions positively. So it's really more about self-control and waiting for the right time and the place to express your emotions without harming yourself and other people. So, where do we go from here? Generally, you have to understand, as people, it's normal for us to have emotions. So, but it's up to us to control how we express them. You have a choice in how you behave. You either behave negatively or positively. And this is what really self-management comes down to. So when does it go wrong? In some cases, some people, it's just their misunderstanding of how a leader is expected to behave. For some people, they believe that they have to shout and bully their employees they have to bully their employees and inappropriately exert power, influence, and authority to somehow believe is the best way to get the best out of their employees. But to what extent can you do this without you recognizing that you are having a negative impact on your employees? You're not motivating them anymore. They actually dread coming to work for you or with you because they can't stand your yelling. There is actually a study out there that turned out to be based on the results that most people leave their jobs because they can't stand their boss. So this is one typical example of why this might happen. Secondly, repeating the same thing over and over and expecting the same results. If you're going to continue to exhibit the negative behavior that, from a situation or different situations and continue to repeat it, this is actually a sign of insanity. So you really need to take a step back and think, is it really worth me doing this every single time? Or can I do it better? The other aspect of when it goes wrong is when you overstress. Because when you overstress, this results in you not thinking clearly and then, of course, passing on the stress to already a very stressed or pushed team. And this is, again, this is not going to get the best out of your team. It's actually going to hinder their performance. And then the other thing, when it goes wrong, is when you start overthinking. And then when you start to overthink, you start allowing that negative or those negative emotions to take over your reactions to the situation. You got to understand that naturally and scientifically, internal emotions are stronger than external emotions. So if you allow your inner emotions to take over your thinking processes, your brain, your psychology at that point in time with negative thoughts, you are going to hinder your performance. It's going to be detrimental to yourself, to your mental well-being, but also this would leak out to the teams as well. Your team will recognize that you're on edge, you're nervous, you're not thinking straight, and you're not giving clear directions to them. This will start to hinder the collaboration and the performance of the team. So you have to pay attention to that. The other aspect is continuous catastrophizing of a situation. I am guilty of this. I did it for over several years, and sometimes I slip into doing it, but I try to practice not to do it. For example, if a meeting did not go to plan, I couldn't answer some other questions, or I thought I could have done better, and I start beating myself out for not doing a better job in that meeting. Um, I spend hours contemplating about it, being disappointed about it. Or maybe when you do have such scenarios, discuss it with your friend. Find a friend, a colleague, talk about it and let it go. At home, we always ask, our children, for example, where you've got siblings and they have a fight or disagreement, you encourage them to talk about it and resolve it there, because there's no point leaving it unresolved, and then a week or two later one does something small to the other, and then there's a big blow up. Why? Because one was holding on to the fact that the previous issue they had last week was not resolved, so they've held in that anger, and that's what you want to avoid. So we'll move on to number 2, how it goes wrong. I'm going to probably use more, again, project-oriented examples here, and the first one is pure communication. If you're not able to clearly communicate to your team and adversely reacting if it's not what you wanted or what you thought you'd communicated, then your team's going to feel, the adverse impact of your reaction. However, this is also going to result to a waste of time because they've spent time trying to configure something to the requirements they thought you wanted, but it's not. And then this is going to build tension and then, of course, stress levels. So if two people understood the same thing the way you had explained it, but you thought otherwise, then I think it's time for you to think about how you communicate to your teams. The other scenario where it could how it goes wrong is, again, acting out on your initial impulsive response negatively. Immediate reactions, I would not suggest or even encourage you to go with those initial reactions. They're not always the best way to go, so I would encourage you to stop the auto reactions and practice something new and apply a new positive response or behavior to the situation. The other piece that you can think about is poor stakeholder management. It definitely goes wrong because some people power gets to them, especially some transformation leads who feel they have the power and are the only ones who can get this project across the line without thinking about the impacted stakeholders, the functionaries, the end users. They forget that during the transition phase, the power and influence shifts to the functional leads, to the end users, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who have to use this end product. So if you haven't engaged them appropriately, taken them on a journey, listen to their feedback and incorporate it in the system to ensure they get the outputs required, they can determine your success or failure of the change initiative, as well as your continuous career or growth or leadership within the company. Overstressing. It makes you unable to clearly think and make the right decision for the situation at hand. It results in underperformance. I've mentioned it before, because if you can't think clearly and make a decision, you're not likely to perform to your best. You're going to make decisions that are not going to get the best out of you or for your team or for the project. So you have to also try and manage those stress levels or just being overstressed about issues. The other thing, lastly, is stop dwelling over the negative emotions or stop dwelling in negative emotions. This can be detrimental to your mood because you will be in a bad mood for a long duration of time, but you're losing time. So if you've got somewhere to go, a project to finish, timelines that the clock is ticking, you don't have time to waste, and you'll also be less positively impactful for your team. And even as a parent, we tell our kids not to dwell in scenarios that have caused them harm or making them upset. Like, for example, if they lost a friend, if one of their friends says, I don't want to play with you anymore, they come home sad, crying, you talk to them and you say to them, you know what, maybe they weren't your true friends anymore. So find another friend tomorrow who you can play with better, who understands you, and you encourage them to move on. So practice the same thing that you say to your kids.
Now, if you find this podcast beneficial and interesting to listen to, do me a favor. Please press follow and subscribe and share with your friends and families.
We move on to number 3. How do you develop self-management? I like this category because I practice a lot and I try to, especially as a change manager. First and foremost, generically, you have to adopt your emotions to the environment, to the audience. It's about self-discipline. And I know this is hard for us to master as human beings, as people, because we are trying to adjust our brains, but also because we don't believe we can change because we've grown up. I'm not a believer in, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. Unless if you're 80 years and above, then I will I can give you a pass on that. But if you're below that, you can definitely continue to learn and master new behaviors. So how do you develop? You need to pay attention to your emotions. Do not disregard them. Do not suppress them. Bottling up your emotions could end up in a big eruption at the wrong time, in the wrong place, and don't want that to happen. Also, stop. Take a moment to stop, breathe. Don't act on your impulsive reactions, as I've given you some examples before. Take time to determine the desired outcome, as this results in a more positive behavior. You have that moment to think, reflect, and then react. Also, read the room before you speak or act. The best person I think did this very well was the former US President Barack Obama. That dude could deliver speech to an audience that he's never met before, like he's been there with them. He understands their problem. He's speaking their language. He's speaking as he relates. He puts himself in their position or in their shoes when he speaks, and it just made him have a an enticing and encouraging message to listen to, even though sometimes he's trying to pass something that you don't believe in, but it's just the way he delivers it. He just didn't recite the speech from a piece of paper that someone actually wrote for him. We got to learn and discovered a few years later. But he related to the situation he was speaking about. He spoke from the heart, and he managed to get that, his messages across without people feeling the fact that he was pushing his ideas or just reciting or saying things for the sake of saying things. Look on the bright side of things. It's not always gloom and doom, because if it goes wrong, quickly pick yourself up, learn from what's gone wrong, and seek for new opportunities, because every single time there's something that's gone wrong, there's something to learn from. And when I say what to learn from, it's what did you do wrong for it to go wrong. So there is an opportunity for you to learn and do it better next time. So pick yourself up and dust yourself on and keep going. Focus on the goal. Don't lose sight of the goal, because if you keep focus on the goal, when you come across obstacles, you will quickly trigger the positive reactions or behaviors of, okay, what can I do to get around this obstacle? What temporary solution can I put in place while I work on the long-term solution? So don't lose focus of your goal. Also, talk to someone. If you're in a situation where it's been an intense meeting, take a break, leave the room, or when you during your break, bite your tongue and don't speak too much. And to show your negative behavior, go out for a walk, get some fresh air, or call a friend or someone that you can trust and speak to them, let it out, vent it out. But also, the people who would who are objective, or will give you an objective side for you to consider your emotions and how you can go about the situation best. Stop catastrophizing. Don't believe in your negative thoughts. We always say this, and psychologists will also tell you, when you hear that little inner voice telling you can't do it, I would say turn it around and say, I can do it. If I did it before, I did it yesterday, I did it last week, that means I can do it. Yes, it failed today, but I can improve it. So keep your confidence up, your self-belief, because these are really core soft skills that you need to get through life and to overcome whatever obstacle you're facing. Lastly, continue practicing. Self-management, you can't learn it one day and expect it to, for you to remember every single time you have to do it. So you have to continuously practice it. Think about it. Think before you react. We are work in progress. We're human beings. We're not perfect. So we have to continuously learn. Now, number 4. What are the benefits of self-management? Or what do you gain from self-management, applying self-management? I would say adaptability. You are and have a higher, better emotional resilience now that you're aware of your emotions. to have the ability to switch from negative to positive behavior, as I've just mentioned in the previous points. You also have more self-control because you're in more in tune with your emotions, it, and this makes you, because you're in tune with your emotions, it makes you stop. You take a pause, you reflect on your previous experience, and then you apply appropriate responses, positive ones rather than negative ones. You become a better leader. Um, they do say, they don't say, actually, there is a study that most people, most most effective leaders apply emotional intelligence, and self-management being one of those core components. It demonstrates that it's important to have this soft skill set. It's essential to your success and to your leadership. So why do I say this? This is because you're in a better position to now assess others' emotions and therefore more equipped emotionally and accurately to diffuse and manage their emotions and the situation at hand, to obtain or to drive towards better outcomes. And based on this, you're also able to manage conflicts even better, or to avoid conflict, to help your team and lead your team through conflicts with the BAU teams who might not be happy with what you're delivering. But because you can assess and understand, your BAU team or the stakeholder you're working with, emotions, you're able to put yourself in their position, in their shoes, and understand what they're talking about and be able to respond appropriately and accordingly while you're listening and not just hearing. Also, what you do gain is high performance. If you can do all the above that I've mentioned, you will drive towards better success, better leadership for yourself and for your team, and people would want to continue working with you. The program lead that I mentioned in episode 6, no one wanted to work with him again, even though there was an opportunity for them to take on a new project. Not even the senior exec team were nominating him to roll on to that project. All of us who worked with him didn't want to work with them anymore. We all found ourselves new projects or new roles so that we didn't have to work with them, and no one wants to be in such a scenario. You also drive better collaboration in the workplace or within your project team, and even those you are getting get those the BAU teams that you're driving the change initiative for. And this is what you would like in a working environment, because you drive creativity, you drive success, and if the team is successful, you'll be successful, and so will the company. So, what is my last thought that I leave with you? Why is self management important? It's because it's an essential skill set, which helps you with your success and leadership. And therefore, my encouragement is that you continuously practice self-management. We're human beings, we have to continuously learn, and this is because it's part of life. It will enable you to have self-control, which drives positive emotions, responses, and adaptability to the situation. Practice it. This is something, if you want to get to the top, they've always said that most senior stakeholders or most senior leaders are hired because of how they look on paper, on their CV. They look great on paper. However, most of them are fired due to their lapse in emotional intelligence. And that tells us a lot about us as human beings, and also senior leaders or leaders, that we've got a long way in actually mastering emotional intelligence. And therefore, we have to continuously practice it. Also, lastly, remember, as people, we don't like working with people or individuals who cannot manage their emotions or their adverse behavior. It just makes people uneasy, and they start to avoid you. Even in a household, no one wants to be in a toxic household. You will get to see that. Or you'll find that people would rather come back late at home, spend a few hours, an hour or two around, the living room or kitchen to eat dinner and just go to sleep, because they just don't want to be around such behavior. And I'm hoping this has helped explain self-management. For next week, we will focus on the social awareness aspect of emotional intelligence. Thank you for listening and see you next week.
If you find this podcast beneficial or interesting, please press follow, like, or subscribe. Lastly, and of course, don't forget to spread the word by sharing. Thank you for listening.